Look, I'm going to come right out and level with you. I don't want to demonize a bunch of foods. That's not my style. I'm more about promoting positivity and what you should eat. But there's some foods that just deserve their own video, so you can really learn why you should avoid them. And when it comes to soy, the odds are just stacked against them. They got so many things going against them. You should not be putting this stuff in your body. So let's go ahead and let's break it down. But before we dive in, please do hit that red subscribe button and also hit that little bell icon so you can turn on notifications. And I highly recommend you check out Magic Spoon down below in the description. If you like cereal, then you're gonna love this stuff, okay? They are a low carb cereal that they're calling themselves like an adult cereal because you get all these cool kid flavors that you used to enjoy when you were a kid, but you get to have them as an adult. So anyway, big thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video and for supporting this channel. The best way that you can support this channel is by supporting the sponsors. So please do check them out down below in the description and get some special savings as well. We're gonna start this video with the estrogen side of things, talking about it from a women's perspective and a men's perspective. So first off, estrogen as far as women are concerned. Okay, soy is a phytoestrogen. Okay, a phytoestrogen means that it's structurally similar to estrogen, although it's not literally estrogen. But as far as it's concerned inside the body, it still binds to estrogen receptors, and the body thinks that it is estrogen. Okay, what this ends up doing is it ends up pounding the estrogen receptor with too much estrogen. And there's a lot of studies that indicate that this is not exactly the best thing for a female. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition published a study that took a look at over 76,000 women and indicated that there is an increased risk of breast cancer associated with high soy consumption, soy isoflavones. Okay, that's just one piece of the equation, but it's standout and it's large and it's impactful, so I want to mention it. And with men, there was a study that was published in Cancer and Epidemiological Biomarkers Previews that demonstrated that soy protein consumption led to a significant decrease in testosterone. And then there was another follow-up study that found that men that consumed soy foods ended up having a significantly lower sperm count. Okay, what is happening here? Once again, with men, the estrogen is binding to the estrogen receptor and it's triggering the decline of testosterone and it's triggering more aromatization and more creation of more estrogen. So it goes down this vicious circle where we end up really skewing the ratio of the proper hormones we should have as human beings. Now let's move over to one that's really interesting and doesn't have a lot of concrete science. It's kind of all over the place, but either way, it's kind of alluding to one powerful thing. Soy messes with our hormones. And in this case, we're talking thyroid. Sometimes we see massive increases, sometimes we see decreases. So one study that was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that soy consumption led to a decrease in T3 and T4, our primary thyroid hormones. And then another study that's published in Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism found that it triggered an increase. And it all depends on the person. So what we're starting to see and what we could kind of imply or hypothesize is that if you are hypothyroid, soy could affect your thyroid in a negative manner that way. And if you're already somewhat hyperthyroid, it could affect you negatively in that manner. The point is, it's triggering effects one way or the other that shouldn't be occurring. Okay. Next up, we talk about saponins. Now, saponins are what are called an immunological adjuvant. Now, what that means is it triggers inflammation, it triggers the activation of our immune system. Now, when this happens, we have pro-inflammatory cytokines, pro-inflammatory mediators that cascade throughout our body and cause all kinds of issues. The hard part, and according to the Journal of Toxicology, is it also ends up increasing intestinal permeability, which means that we can trigger more inflammation via lipopolysaccharides getting through our gut and into our blood. Okay, the biggest problem with saponins is they're not destroyed during heating. Okay, so you can cook soy to your heart's desire and it's not going to break down the saponins. You're still going to have this inflammatory response that occurs directly just from the components of soy itself. But while we're talking about inflammation, let's talk about the oil that's derived from soy. Soybean oil is pure omega-6. Well, I shouldn't say pure, but it's next to grapeseed oil, the highest omega-6 content oil that's out there. Very fragile oil, very low quality, and it's barely shelf stable, but it's so cheap and so mass produced, we find it in everything, okay? It's omnipresent in just about everything you could imagine, and that's what makes it so darn dangerous. And because it's so unstable and already pro-inflammatory, they usually have to hydrogenate it to even make it more stable. So you have a double whammy of inflammatory oil, plus it's been hydrogenated, turned into a trans fat. Do the math, not good stuff. You're gonna find it everything in processed foods, you're gonna find it in peanut butter, you're gonna find it in a lot of chocolates, you're gonna find it in tons of breakfast foods and things like that. So just be really careful. And speaking of breakfast, I'll mention again, I put a link down below for Magic Spoon if you wanna try some good low-carb, keto-friendly cereal. I really do recommend you check them out. Again, big thank you to them. So please do check them out after this video. I know I'm pushing you a little bit with it, but honestly, you just haven't lived until you try it. Okay, next thing is going to be oxalates. People constantly complain about oxalates in almonds and spinach and things. Okay, let me explain what oxalates are. They're really not the biggest deal in the world. Our liver naturally produces oxalic acid, already produces oxalates. Okay, but what oxalates do when they come in an abundance in food form is they chelate minerals. They chelate with magnesium and things like that, and they chelate to them and they bind to them so hard that the enzymes within our body cannot break that bond down. So we end up excreting it in our stool, which means we're not absorbing the minerals. Now, this isn't as profound as people make it sound, but when it's combined with the saponins, combined with the omega-3s, combined with the other just compounding effects of soy, you have a big problem, right? Okay, that's what we have to be careful with. Which leads me into the next piece, phytic acid. Very similar to oxalates, except phytic acid binds and has a stronger affinity for things like magnesium, which is very important, but it tends to bind to vitamin B12. Now, who is consuming an abundance of soy? Usually vegans that aren't educated on what they're consuming, or vegetarians that aren't really educated on what they're consuming and putting in their body. So they consume an abundance of soy. There's already a significant deficiency in vitamin B12 in a lot of vegans and vegetarians. So then all of a sudden you're stuck with this situation where not only are you not getting B12, the B12 that you are getting in is getting chelated by the phytic acid. Fortunately, phytic acid gets broken down in the fermentation process. So if you're eating tempeh or any kind of fermented soy, that's not as much of an issue. Okay, then there's another piece. Okay, we're talking about chelation, enzymes, things like that. There are some pretty powerful enzyme inhibitors within soy. Okay, the enzyme inhibitors within soy are sort of the natural protection against parasites for the soy to begin with. Okay, so basically what these enzyme inhibitors do is when a parasite comes into the soybean, it gets acted upon by these enzyme inhibitors and it kills the parasite. Well, this translates over to us too. These enzyme inhibitors basically make it so that our enzymes aren't able to do their job as well, which therefore makes it so that the pancreas has to produce more enzymes to try to digest our food. Well, this puts stress on the pancreas, which isn't good for the body. It puts stress on digestion. It can potentially lead to pancreatic hyperplasia, where the pancreas enlarges because it's working so hard. It's just not a good thing at all, right? All right, two more things we have to talk about. This next one is wild and it's not discussed a lot. There are unnatural amino acids that are in soy. When soy is processed, it is processed and it creates a new amino acid that is unnatural. It's called lysoalanine, and lysoalanine is not recognized by our body. In fact, only about 40% of it's actually digested and broken down, which, do the math, leaves us with 60% of an unnatural protein, random amino acid, unnatural amino acid floating around through our body. What is it doing? Could be triggering inflammation. At the very least, it's not digesting and causing some discomfort there. It's just a mystery, and the processing is not good. And when we look further at the processing, it leads us to number 10, which is the use of hexane. Hexane is a solvent that they use to dehull the soy. Okay, now it doesn't sound too bad until you realize that this is what's used in shoemaking, in furniture making, to sort of help make the process easier and help dehull stuff and strip things and stuff like that. Okay, here's what's wild. There's no real FDA regulation on how much hexane is safe in soybean, right? In soybeans or soybean oil, right? But when they look at fish, they say, okay, fish are allowed to have 5 parts per million hexane. Well, soy has 21 parts per million hexane. But because there's no regulation, nobody knows this. That's what's scary. So fish, which is heavily regulated, they say you can't have more than 5 parts per million. But soy has 21 parts per million. So clearly we know where the line is with safety, and we probably shouldn't be consuming this stuff. So if you're gonna have soy, try to have it in the fermented form. It's just a lot safer, but realistically, avoid it at all costs. And again, big thank you to Magic Spoon. Don't forget to check them out down below in the description. And don't forget to hit that red subscribe button. I'll see you tomorrow.